Okay, one of the things that we're going to be doing, regardless of what setting we're in, is that we're going to be leading our artists by providing some type of training. And so, again, as I'm looking across the landscape here, it seems like most people are falling into sort of similar categories, same as we are here, in how they approach training with people. We're going to have a section on rehearsals later on, but suffice it to say for now that rehearsals are one of those times that's kind of already built into your schedule. And as I go evaluate or spend time with other teams, I'm always amazed at how little time they spend in their rehearsal shaping the sound. It seems like we're just kind of charging right through the music and getting it done so we can get out, and not really taking time to craft the music or craft the musicianship of the people that are on that team. And so one of the first things I almost always encourage the worship leader to do is to take some time, even while they're going through a song, and make some mental notes about what each instrumentalist or each vocalist is doing, and then to comment on that during the rehearsal. It cues every team member into the fact that you're listening and kind of holding them accountable for the job that they're doing. So you might say things like, "Hey, bass player, love that riff that you're doing there at the end," or "Love that groove that you're doing. I noticed that you kind of made it big and meaty there at the end of the verse, kind of leading into the chorus. So I really think that helps us lead into the chorus well and really builds out that dynamic. Drummer, I love that you're doing toms at the beginning and then you keep the hi-hat kind of closed and tight during the verse. I think that's exactly what we need." And vocalists, you wouldn't maybe do all those right in a row, but you're taking some time to comment on that in such a way that they kind of step up and bring their best game. You also know at some point whether or not they're doing something that's not working. And so you might, on a different song, say to the bass player, "Hey, is there any way that you could play up the octave on that verse? Because I think when we come down on the chorus, I want it to feel bigger and kind of fuller. And so is that something that can you play up the octave there just on that same notes, just up the octave? And then when we hit that verse, can you kind of bring it down and kind of fill out that thing?" Or, "Hey, drummer, can you make sure that you're on the ride in between, chorus and going back into verse 2, and then switch back over to the hi-hat right when the vocals come in." That'll give them some space, kind of free up some space. There's whatever it might be, you're commenting to the band at different points and kind of pushing them. I think our rehearsals can be great training times. Again, you've probably heard me say that we'll never be better than our ear will allow us to be. And so a lot of the times, we're just reshaping people's ear. We're giving them a more sensitivity with which to hear the music and with which to hear one another. A lot of us get zoned into what we're doing, right? We're like, "Hey, I'm hitting all the right notes at the right time. I must be contributing well." But we need to teach our musicians and sometimes ourselves to listen beyond ourselves, to know our stuff well enough that we can really pick out different parts at different times and bring the whole together well. And we'll talk about that a little bit more when we talk about rehearsals. But again, plan on one of the great ways that we can train our people is actually during the rehearsals. I've seen this a lot and begun to do this too. One of the fun ways to help train our team, help them to be better. Again, if certain people in the scriptures were called worship leaders because they were skillful at it, then we should build skill into our environments each week, right? So one of the things that I do, and I've seen a lot of other guys do, is we'll have a pre-rehearsal with one particular member of the team. So kind of how that looks for me, if it's helpful to grab what parts you can grab of this and adapt it for your situation. But what I'll typically do is I'll call up or email some member of the team when I'm leading worship, and I'll say, "Hey, bass player, I'd really love to have you. Is there any way that you could swing in a little early? I'd like to work with you on some stuff." And 9 times out of 10 they can. So we'll meet a little early or meet on a different night or whatever it might be, and work through. I'll do a couple things with them. First of all, I'll check in, just see how they're doing spiritually. We don't have enough of those conversations a lot of time in our worship ministry, so I'll make it a point to kind of check in. And sometimes that takes longer than I expect, and sometimes it's kind of a short conversation, but those are great conversations to have. So I'll kind of check in to see how they're doing spiritually. And then I'll spend some time. We multi-track each week, and so I'll pour over those from week to week, and oftentimes I'll see a theme with a certain player. Hey, this bass player, for instance, only plays eighths all the time, right? They never play quarters, and it gets annoying after a while. They have no dynamics, whatever it might be, right? So I'll say, "Hey, One of the things I've been listening to up on the recorder is this. Maybe I'll show up for them. I usually have a CD that I give to them. And sometimes it's a very encouraging CD, like, hey, I love what you've been doing. I made a copy of it. I just thought you'd like to have it because it was so good, you know, the other day. So here you go. Other times I'll say, hey, one of the things I really think we need to work on is our stops, right? That stops, that creates space, that creates groove. That's what makes a good groove. And so, you know, let's work on that a little bit tonight. So work on a particular skill for a little while. And then the third thing that we try to do is to work it back into what music we're working on that evening. So if there's a particular song coming up that night where I really feel like that up the octave thing is really working with our bass player, or hey, I really want him to feel that stop and how that works, we'll run over that song a handful of times. Again, it's just the two of us running over that idea, and that way when rehearsal does come, whether it's a few days later or it's later on that evening, they feel pretty comfortable. They feel even more comfortable, and they have some real life time to work out that skill. So pre-huddles, pre-rehearsals, whatever you want to call those, are a great way to kind of help your people get ready. Another thing that I've seen people do pretty often is they'll do kind of mini huddles. So depending on the size of your church and how many instrumentalists or vocalists that you have, I've seen a lot of groups get together and say, hey, let's get all of our vocalists together on a Saturday, and we'll call it a Super Saturday rehearsal because that'll make it sound more fun or something. And we're going to work on a few things usually during that time. Same kind of deal. Here we have vocal coaches that will do that pretty regularly. They'll call all the vocalists together. Maybe it's once a quarter. Maybe it's however often they need it. And they'll sit down with them and they'll try to cover a few things. One of the things that we always try to cover is new songs, right? New songs that are coming up that we know we're planning to do here as a part of our repertoire. We'll hand to our vocal coaches first. They'll get really familiar with it and then be able to teach it to the rest of the vocalists. And kind of here's what we're looking for. Another thing we try to do again is we've noticed any patterns over the last little while that most of our vocalists feel weak in this area of dynamics, right? They feel really weak in the area of ad-libs or weak in the area of stage presence or whatever it might be. We'll say, hey, let's focus on that as sort of a dynamic for this vocal huddle. And we'll do a variety of things, videos and outside guests or whatever it might be, to kind of help our people work on that particular skill. If it's, we've got all of our electric players together in a room, and that's kind of fun and crazy, but whoever's leading that or leading parts of that will say, hey, here's the song, here's the riff, let's all work it out. Here's a skill that we can use that we can apply to lots of different songs. Here's a new pedal, here's a new loop machine, whatever it is, and work it out amongst the players there, kind of let them see what that's like and feel out what that's like. Our sound guys do that quite a bit too. They'll all get together on a Saturday to work through. Sound seems like one of those rabbit holes that just never ends. There's always something new to learn, and so they'll get together a lot. Pro presenter folks get together and they'll work on, hey, here's a feature we haven't been using, or a couple features we haven't been using. Here's a couple things that we need to tighten up that we haven't been doing very well, and they'll kind of show them all at once, get it all ramped up. So those huddles become a pretty big deal. And then you've probably seen the same as I that conferences seem to be the next big thing. And we made a policy a while back that we would have one in-house, one out-of-house as often as possible throughout at least one of each per year. And so out-of-house conferences, you know, they're all over the place. Doesn't take a big search to find those. They'll probably come to you very quickly. Seminars for Worship does one, Willow does one, Granger does one. There's all kinds of churches around that will do them, and also big organizations that will do them. And we'll try to send as many folks, or at least as leaders, that we can to those events so they get some training, right? They get to kind of be on the front lines, get exposed to some bigger things. And even if we can't afford for the whole team to go, we may send, again, a few people that can go. And then we'll try to have an in-house conference, and that's where our leaders are the ones that are doing most of the training. Or we've brought somebody in from the outside. A thing that's worked out well for us, maybe it'll work well for you, is we'll grab a group like Robbie C. was here, Robbie C. Band was here a couple years ago, and we were able to have them do a concert, and then because he's a worship leader at his church, we were able to have him stay after, he and his band stayed after, and they kind of worked our workshops for us. And we filled in the gaps, right? They didn't have a video guy with them, so we brought a video guy in that would do video and sound and whatever. But in essence of it, we were able to have a great concert and a great training event kind of all in one. So I encourage you to be thinking through, training is going to be a big part of what we do to lead our artists, to help them go places where they can't go on their own. So be thinking through what avenues you want to kind of work into your schedule so that you might be training your artists well.